Hey everybody! So I am starting a new book series and I thought I'd share all my thoughts that I have for the series with you guys. So overshare incoming, spoilers incoming, because I will not be like hiding certain stuff from you in this video. I'm really just going to give you all of my thoughts that I have throughout the reading of this series. I am far behind because I should have been reading this first one in January, February. It is now the 31st of March. So we are behind, but we are finally starting this. And what are we starting? We are starting The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. So I didn't necessarily plan to already give you guys like an update today, but then, we are not even in the story yet, and I already have some things to talk about. I have started, I'm 4 chapters in, and I'm really enjoying it so far because I gotta say that I had some sort of like preconceptions. Like, I didn't look into the blurb of this book or anything like that. But I knew from certain like exposure to online, reviews about it, that a lot of people seem to struggle a little bit more with book one compared to the rest of the series, and that like this book two is kind of where you get hooked into the story, and that book one is a little bit more sort of like textbooky, or that was my interpretation of what people were saying. It was kind of like so much is happening and it's very like grand scale or something like that. That's what I kind of interpreted. I was kind of thinking that that meant that like book one is going to be kind of dense and dry. But so far, I personally haven't really felt like that at all. So I'm, of course, only like 4 chapters in. I'm like 60 pages in at this point in time. So it's not like I'm massively into this book so that I can really make up my mind. But I am like 10% into it. And I definitely haven't had that feeling of like, oh my god, what am I reading? I'm gonna have to like struggle to stay awake or struggle to get through a chapter with this one. I will say that a first funny thing that happened while reading this book was that, when it comes to books that are Chinese inspired, I always kind of struggle just because of the fact that I do know some Chinese. So there was a pronunciation guide at the beginning, but it's like super short. And then like the spelling of certain names just confused me because then you have like words that start with TH or PH, for example, which like in Pinyin, so the Chinese transliteration system, that doesn't happen. So I was like, okay, but how am I supposed to pronounce these now? And like, I think my conclusion is I'm supposed to pronounce them the way that the English pronounce the TH and the PH, I guess, because, this is written for an English speaking public. So if there's no explanation about how to pronounce it, I guess I should just pronounce it the way that an English person would pronounce it. But so I was kind of looking up to see if I could find some more explanation online about the pronunciation. And then I got to this lovely AI generated explanation for the pronunciation of the Grace of Kings. Saying that I've pronounced it the gaze of kings, which I can get behind that. But then it gives like this whole breakdown of how to pronounce each word in the title. And it's basically just like, you need to pronounce the, like the English article the. You need to pronounce grace, like the English word grace. Off, like the English preposition off. It's like, thanks. I'm pretty sure that we're far away from AI taking over the world. That's just all I'm gonna say about that. But so yeah, I've been enjoying the first 4 chapters. I do have to say like the first 2 chapters were from different perspectives, and so when we went to chapter three, I was kind of like, oh, I'm already starting to forget these names. But now chapter three and four were from the same perspective, so I'm not entirely sure whether we're just gonna mainly be following that character, and that character, I gotta admit, I originally had my reservations about. Like, not in the first chapter when we meet him, but then we do kind of do a time jump, like 70 years forward or something like that. And then he turns out to be this sort of like good for nothing guy who's just like cruising by, like he used to be living off of his parents, then got kicked out of their house, lived at his brother's place, basically was not welcome there, and now is just like roaming from one friend to the other, and then like kind of just like cruising through life without putting much effort in. But then he also does some things that kind of make you go like, oh, okay, like he has good intentions and good instincts to help the people around him. So yeah, I'll reserve my judgments about this guy. I'm not fully convinced yet that he's like not a decent guy. But in any case, I'm looking forward to continuing on. As I indicated, it's going much quicker than I thought it was going to go. So far, I haven't been able to speed up. Like I initially thought, like, okay, if I do 2 chapters a day in it, then it'll take me like probably some 20 days, which is a little bit much considering I have a lot more to read throughout the month as well. But so far, I haven't been able to speed up, mainly just because of, like wanting to go to sleep at a decent time as well. So it is 8 o'clock now. I'm gonna start reading, and hopefully I can get a little bit more read today in it, and then hopefully, hopefully I get so sucked in that it goes even faster than that. But at the moment, it's definitely not a struggle, and I am eager to read on. I'm not like really hooked in the sense of like I need to know what's going to happen next, but hopefully that will come soon as well. All right, feel free to call me somewhat stupid, but the chapter that I just read was called like The Death of the Emperor. And considering the title, I feel somewhat ashamed of how long it took me to realize that this chapter was going to be about the death of the emperor. Yeah, but interesting. Like, there's like um, a scene in which the gods are talking amongst each other, and for a moment there I thought that we were actually seeing them talk amongst each other, like seeing stone statues come to life, but I'm guessing it was just like a dream, as is implied later on. But one theme that comes into this, which is the theme that I really enjoy, is sort of like the idea of history is written down by those who win it, and so that what knowledge is passed down through the ages is the knowledge that people wanted to see passed down through the ages. And we see it like only in a slight glimmer here, so it kind of has this passage like, "What is truth?" The regent said, enunciating his words carefully. "What happened in the Grand Tunnels? What happened on the island of Ecovi? These things must be written down in the history books, and someone has to decide what should be written." And then it's kind of more looking at like fake news, I guess, and the idea of like um, convincing people to see events in the light that, in this case, this region wants them to see things. Which, considering this book was published like way before Trump, I think, is interesting. I mean, of course, Trump is not the first guy to be obsessed about fake news, but it's interesting to see that, this book is now very current again because of its discussion of fake news here. It's from 2015. When was its first term of? It's right before the first term, right, of Trump. But in any case, so I like that theme. That's a theme that's running through, for example, War and Peace. My favorite classic is this sort of idea of history being determined by the winner, and like the the past acts that we might admire are past acts that we have been led to know about, but we are not necessarily led to know all the good things that the losing party had going for them, because that's just not being written down. But so yeah, going into probably a final chapter for today. I was kind of hoping to fit in an extra chapter today, but I don't think that that is going to happen because I am feeling somewhat tired today, and my eye is kind of acting up, and giving me some grief. But so yeah, in the weekend I'll definitely have more time. Tomorrow I won't have much time because I have Spanish class, and I kind of want to skip it. But on the other hand, there will be 2 weeks of a break from that class in the 2 weeks to come, so I might as well go tomorrow night, and then just I'll have the 2 week break. Otherwise, it'll be like a month that I haven't been to Spanish class at the end of those 2 weeks, and it'll be even more difficult to return. Hello. So I read some more chapters. I'm now about to start chapter 10. So in the past few chapters, we were introduced to like two guys who were part of like I don't know, like a worker crew who were like conscripted because they were seen as criminals, I think, and one of them is now supposedly going to be the next king, or like there was a prophecy, the prophecy of the fish, which is the name of this part of the book as well. But I don't feel like we've spent much time with these characters, so I'm not entirely sure whether this is like a false trail or not. And then we met up with a character that we've briefly seen like one chapter of before, and he seems to also be like taking steps because he basically just killed like the Duke, I think, who was like the representative of this big empire who had kind of taken over his ancestral home. So he's definitely making moves. And we've got the character that I've now really grown to care about, who is Cooney. And so he is basically just like, I like these types of characters that you think are just sort of like maybe a little bit like assholes or like people who aren't really taking life seriously, but then you see that in their actions, they're basically just like doing good stuff for people around them, and that they're just like kind of hiding the better side of themselves. And so with this character, we also see that he's basically in charge of these types of corvée crews where he has to basically deliver new guys to a location so that they can like have to be doing forced labor there, but because he doesn't have enough guys, because there's this whole rebellion that started with the prophecy of the fish, that like he is basically deciding like that his guys can kind of go free, but then they all decide to kind of follow him because like he's a decent guy who has been like showing them his good side as well. And so basically, he is now also like a third contender, I would say, for this throne. While at the same time, we also, of course, still have an actual emperor. However, the actual emperor is basically just like doing nothing and just enjoying life. However, he's also kind of been steered into that position by the regent, who is the one who's actually controlling this area now. So, yeah, I think we're going into a massive sort of like conflict for power. Probably we will see this like unified empire splinter off into different kingdoms. Wondering whether this is something like Romance of the Three Kingdoms inspired. However, I have not read Romance of the Three Kingdoms, so I could never even confirm that, or that would not tell me anything about what's going to happen within this book neither. But so yeah, happy to go back into it. I feel like we've spent most of our times with Cooney, and I mean, I'm not like that's not a dig at the book or anything like that because I also care most about Cooney, but then of course I probably also care most about Cooney because we've spent most of our time with him. So it would be best, of course, to also have some more perspective, like chapters from the perspective of Mata, and of this new guy who we've only seen like one chapter of, to kind of even the balance in terms of like our allegiances as readers, or maybe we're just really supposed to just mainly care about Cooney and mainly be following him. Don't know yet, but this is a guy that I'm currently invested in his storyline, and the others are just like popping in occasionally so that I don't really care all that much about them yet, or about their potential stakes within this whole sort of like bid for power. All right, welcome to the 5 seconds in which there's so much sun on my face every day here now during this time of year. But so I have continued a little bit further into the Grace of Kings, and now I'm starting to see people's problems with this book. Not like problems, but why this is people's least favorite in the series. But that just gives me hope. That means like, okay, I'm not writing this off because while Jesus, stay balanced on my finger there. While I enjoy the story and while I enjoy what I'm reading in the moment that I'm reading, I'm also really, really, really struggling to keep keep track of who's who's which part of this world, who like a lot of characters are introduced on like they are introduced, we forget about them, we revisit them chapters later, or we never revisit them, or and like what seem to be our core characters don't really feel like our core characters because we're introducing so many characters that we're also not spending that much time with what I consider to be our core characters. So I am struggling when it comes to that. I'm struggling to like keep track of everything that's going on. There are a lot of characters that have already passed away in this meantime as well. Then I'm like, oh wait, I'm like 200 pages into this book, and like some major characters have already passed away. So I'm struggling when it comes to that. And so I have heard that in the subsequent books within the series, you do definitely get much closer to the characters. This is very much more of a wide scope, I feel like, which doesn't necessarily suit my taste. So it's not my preferable style, but it does combine that with in the moment itself, the moment in which you're writing, the way in which um, the story is told within the moment itself does not feel that wide. It does not necessarily feel like we're not spending any time like getting into the mind of the characters. We're just spending so little time with each one of them that I'm just getting lost when it comes to that. So here's hoping that I get a little bit better at that. Here's hoping I find some sort of a good recap video as well that can maybe help me out with that, to make sure that I've just got the broad strokes down before going into the sequel eventually. I mean, I still have 400 pages left in this book, but I just feel like I'm enjoying it in the moment, but I am not like seeing the overall pictures. I'm not really following what is happening, and what all different players are doing. So, which is concerning because I'm like, yeah, okay, that's, you can love the writing style, but you also have to love the story. And while there's nothing really like I dislike about the story, I just feel like I'm not following it. Hello, I'm going to give like a very opposite update now compared to the last one, because yesterday I read about 100 pages in this book, and it's starting to make sense. I'm following along now. I think like this book just needs to be consumed in sort of like larger stretches. Like, don't read a chapter or two a day, because like unless you have a really good memory, because by the time that you're revisiting certain characters, like who was this again? And so it just like adds to the confusion. So yesterday I basically reread the previous chapter that I had listened to, because I knew like that I had not retained anything from that chapter. Um, and I don't know, maybe it was just like the mood I was in yesterday, because I immediately noticed that I was like able to pay better attention to the audiobook, that I was just like following along, and like my mind wasn't drifting as much as it had the previous time. And yeah, I've enjoyed it a lot. So basically, we've now got Kuni and Mata being bros, like best friends. They are working together to overthrow the Xana Empire. And I really enjoyed that dynamic between the two, because they're like really different from one another. But like the best pairings are those that like are really opposites, that work together, respect one another, and despite their differences can kind of work together and form a unit. And so I really enjoyed their dynamic between the two of them. So most of the storyline between those two at this point in time has been like different battles that have taken place, different sieges. And their sort of like ways of resolving them, where you can see like Mata is like the one who has the pride, he has the higher upbringing, he has like he's of a higher class, and so he's more easily taunted by the opposing forces. He's more easily going to like he's more restricted in his strategy thinking, because he's just like still thinking about the traditional strategies that he's been taught, and he's just like holding on to these morals and saying like, we cannot do it like that, like that's unfair to try and win a war that way. Whereas Cooney is like the pragmatist, he's the one who gets things done no matter what. And so he doesn't shy away from taking certain strategies, like for example, when the city is burning, like having all himself and all of his men like pee over the side of the wall to douse the flames. Like Mata is like, what the fuck are you asking me to do? And Kuni is just like, just do it, guy, like this is how you win. So I really like their dynamic between the two of them, and I think that that is a really interesting matching to have going on. And then during these sections we also were introduced to a character that I really already enjoyed from like that first moment that we were introduced to her. Unfortunately, she just passed away as well. So her name is Kikomi. And so she is a princess of one of these islands, and the island is very much associated with like the goddess of beauty, I think she is, where she's like, I'm more than that. I'm more than just my looks. So she's trying to, like grow as a person, learn more, develop her intellect, but people always just come back to her beauty and praising her for her beauty. And so she has this meeting with what I assume is the goddess at one point in time, in which the goddess is kind of, like pushing her to use this beauty, even though that is not like the way that that's not where she sees her worth. But the goddess is still saying, like, like use the tools that you've got, use your beauty to, like make it up into the world. And so she tries to use her beauty to kind of help destroy this Xana empire. Unfortunately, she's caught and has to kind of make a deal with the Empire, and then, she basically tries to kill either Mata or his cousin. And so, because she kind of has feelings for Mata, she decides to kill his, like, I think it's his cousin. I'm not entirely sure about the family relationship, but so, and then she is killed in the process. So, yeah, I love this character. I mean, I didn't get to know her all that well, though we did have like 3 chapters with her. So, but yeah, now she's passed away. So, yay. Don't get too attached to characters in this book, it seems like, because, as I've said this earlier, where there are certain characters that I think are going to stick around for quite a while and then they're already dead within the first 200 pages. So, lesson learned. All right, I'm not actually entirely sure where I last left off in discussing this book and what all passed since the last time I updated you guys, because I think I listened to about like 150 pages of this, so a whole ton of stuff must have happened, and I'm not entirely sure of what it all is because I just don't remember where I left off. But so I think last time I updated you guys, I was saying how I like the dynamics between Mata and Kumi, and those dynamics have definitely gone down the drain pipe. Like they are no longer good friends of one another, and which is sad because you can see that Kumi is kind of like he wants things to go differently, but Mata has definitely got that like thirst for power and sees Kumi as like somebody who should be taking a step back, who should be taking a secondary position. And even though Kumi is willing to do that, Mata clearly sees him as a sort of like threat to his power, to his level of dominance that he wants to have. And so Mata kind of feels like, like I should be on top, I deserve this, and like how could Kumi betray me? How is it but that he, like doesn't see that this is where I belong, whereas Kumi would have definitely stepped aside for him, but that's definitely difficult to manage. And so now Kumi kind of has to navigate like being friendly with Mata to the extent that, like Mata doesn't see him as an actual threat, but then also having to navigate like the difficult circumstances that Mata is pushing him in. So he basically banished Kumi to this far off region where he basically has like a role that is important to the region, but the region is so unimportant that the role in and of itself is very inferior to what he has accomplished throughout the overthrowing of the Xana Empire. And at the same time, he's holding his wife and child kind of hostage by keeping them where they currently are and like not allowing them to see one another, and basically putting kind of spies in place to make sure that Kumi's staying where he's supposed to be. And there's a lot of like political maneuvering happening here with like kind of like masking true feelings, or masking, not even like masking, but like trying to make sure that Mata interprets actions the way that Mata wants to interpret actions, or the way that Mata should be interpreting those actions, and not giving Mata sort of like uh, any leeway in allowing him to think that Kumi is going to be a threat to him. And I like the fact that we also have this dynamic between Kumi and his wife where they are very open in their communication with one another. And while there is some sort of like natural tendencies to jealousy when they speak to one another, and through the mediation of like Mata's cousin, I think she is, we see them being able to just like put aside those feelings of jealousy and like be there for the other and accept that the other might sometimes need an other person, but that they will always be the most important person in the world to one another. So I'm really enjoying that, and I'm actually really enjoying the second wife to Kumi. I hope we get a lot more of her because I think that her character shows great promise as a character to get invested in. And yeah, I've been really enjoying seeing the sort of like attempts to de-escalate a rising conflict with Mata, and then now this sort of like bossing off of like of Kumi, kind of seeing like, okay, you know what, I'm just going to shoot my shot, try to get to a like trying to play the game and get as high as possible. And yeah, I'm looking forward to see what's going to unfold next. All right, so 1 hour left in the audiobook, but that'll be for not even tomorrow, probably, because I have Spanish class tomorrow, so probably just for Friday evening. But a few things that I realized while listening to this that I still wanted to talk about is so I talked about how the new wife of Kunigaru is one that like has great promise, but another character that I've really liked being introduced to is the new general, who is a woman. So yeah, I really enjoyed this look at a female general and sort of like the misogyny of people underestimating her and like expecting her to not be able to, do a good job of things, whereas, like she's proving everybody wrong by being a very good strategist. And then something that I appreciate about like Kunigaru's whole motivation right now is that so he definitely doesn't want to like get into way of Mata because Mata is his friend. However, what he does see is that like Mata is not a good ruler in the end. Like Mata is a great warrior and probably also quite good at strategy and all those things, but he's mainly just like a warrior. And so he's always been like in a perfect role when he was out there on the battlefield supporting Kuni. However, when he has to step into this role of leadership and become the sort of like ruler of a nation, he's very petty and vengeful, short sighted, rigorous in the way that he approaches that. And so he isn't really able to govern in a way that suits the people in the best way. And so, yeah, I like that his motivation is like, I need to do this for the good of the people, and like there might be some selfishness involved in all those things, but it's mainly just like him realizing that his friend really isn't a great leader. So even though he would like to step aside and let let Mata take the leadership role that he so desperately wants, but he also feels like he cannot just do that because that would harm more people, basically. Good morning. You're looking somebody who just finished The Grace of Kings. I mean, I finished it yesterday, so just is not really suitable in this sentence, I guess. But so I finished The Grace of Kings. Do I have any thoughts about that final section that I read? Not all that much. I mean, I'm sad that Matazuri has died because like I as indicated throughout this book, I really enjoyed the dynamic between Kuni and Mata, and so I was kind of hoping for a sort of like um, reconciliation between the two of them, and I think it's really like tragic that then in the end, Kuni is kind of like talked into betraying Mata after like getting that reconciliation. I wasn't really thinking that reconciliation was going to be successful, but like good on the author for like turning things around because I expected that Mata was going to be the one who's going to like betray Kuni's trust here, but no, it's Kuni who ends up doing what Mata had accused him of originally, so he ends up betraying Mata, and so Mata then basically kind of takes his own life to when he sees that like
there's no escape for him. But so yeah, the end is there. I do like that it's kind of already like preparing us for some infighting between the different wives of Cooney within the sequel that is going to come. And I do like that sort of like intrigue of, you know, like the power games between women, that, you know, were happening in historical times. And I'm also looking forward to see what is going to happen with this general of Cooney, because she is very ruthless, which I like a ruthless woman in literature. And so I'm eager to see like when we get to book two, where as I understand it, we're gonna get much closer to the characters, how much nuance we're putting into this character, because I feel like now she's very much this sort of like badass woman who has risen to the top, but who like takes no prisoners, who is just like ruthless through and through, which she had to be in order to get to the top, in order to reclaim the position, or to claim the position that she definitely was entitled to, because she definitely has the talent for it. Um, but she, on her end, also views most women the way that most men view most women. And so it'll be interesting to get a little bit closer to her character. Yeah, camera rudely interrupted me because I have no storage left. So what this clip was actually about. So I am really looking forward to getting a little bit closer to these characters. I feel like this is like the groundworks where we're establishing like what came before for these characters, and there's a ton of things that have happened throughout this book, but I feel like we've always kept a little bit like a distant view on a lot of the characters, and we've gotten to know them through their actions, and we've gotten a little bit of an insight into who they are, but I definitely want more of that. And so I am definitely hoping that the writing style of the second one will fit me better. Not to say that I don't like this one, but it's just like I tend to like to be closer to the characters, to their reasoning, to get a real sense for who they are. And this is a little bit more zoomed out than what I typically prefer. And I know that the second book, for a lot of people, like that's what they say about it, that, you know, you get so much closer to the characters. So I'm very much looking forward to that. So yeah, let me know if you want me to also give my thoughts for the second book within this series. I mean, I'm going to be starting it pretty soon, so I'll probably just continue vlogging the experience regardless. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you've listened all the way through the end, it means you have also read The Grace of Kings. So let me know your thoughts on the first book within this series, and, you know, its relation to what the rest of the series is like. But no spoilers, please. But so yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and see you guys for the next one. Bye!